This will be a very difficult video essay to write and record, and for a multitude of reasons. Like, first of all, this is undoubtedly a highly subjective, very biased, opinion-based video or essay. Well, video essay. Secondly, this is a highly debatable thesis, though I will counter-argue that perhaps that is what makes the question of this topic today so fascinating. Fascinating enough to write a whole script for. I mean, yeah, debatable as it is, even now it's like, well, did security breach need to exist? What was the point? What was the purpose? I guess what I'm arguing is, like, narratively speaking, is this the sort of direction the FNAF franchise should have gone in? And of course, by that extent, the million-dollar question is, does the FNAF franchise, let alone the security breach saga, need any further installments? Even more so, this video might be pretty challenging to make because, admittedly, regardless of how anyone might feel about any of these opinions and observations, most of what I want to say isn't much different than, like, what other people have said. A lot of us, like, fans of FNAF and security breach, we found common problems in these game entries and in the franchise as a whole. So yeah, many of us got similar things to say. I mean, everybody and their mama and their daddy and their granddaddy done made a video or a blog post or a TikTok or something about this topic. Still, I can't help but want to say it myself. The great thing about opinion-based videos like this is that there are no right or wrong answers, just unpopular ones. So consider that a disclaimer. So I understand that basically everyone watching this video knows what FNAF is, but just a quick recap will be recited now. FNAF is the abbreviation of the long-standing indie horror franchise called Five Nights at Freddy's. Initially, it began with a rather humble, simple story. You are a broke-ass dude applying for a shady job as a nighttime security guard, and as you progress through the work week, the nightly phone calls you receive forces you to realize that you've put yourself in certain danger, and all you can do now is survive for 5 nights. However, any long-standing fan of FNAF is aware of just how far the story divested from its original source material. By the third game, I'd argue, and if not the third game, then definitely by the fourth game, the story just got absolutely out of hand. We went from being, just a night guard trying to survive for a little $100 paycheck to learning about this guy called William Afton, who apparently went from just being a random murderer who killed a few kids and stuffed them into robots back in the 80s to a girl in a bunny suit, taking care of Peepaw Willie, meanwhile chasing around a random little orphan boy and his robot lackey Freddy in a shopping mall. Well, in a pizzeria, arcade, daycare, theater inside of a shopping mall. Like, what? Oh, and I think apparently there are some more missing and likely murdered kids who, correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, but literally I think the only mention of all those missing kids in Security Breach was at the very end of the game. I don't think I recall anything during the earlier events of Security Breach talking about or referencing these missing kids. Well, I mean, I don't know. Actually, I think there might have been something when you went into a security room. I'm not sure if I'm making that up, though. So someone correct me on that. Or, someone fact check me, please. But other than that, I don't really think that there was much, if anything, referencing these missing kids, let alone how they might relate to Gregory or why Gregory or even Freddy would even give a damn about these missing kids to begin with, let alone want to help them by the end of the game. I guess what I'm getting at is that FNAF has a narrative that truly could, only be fixed with either a reboot, which I'm personally not much of a fan of because of their history with it, but I do believe that if handled efficiently, it could work. So, that being said, either having a reboot of the sorts, or I think the narrative of FNAF could be saved or could have been saved, if it had just stopped at FNAF 6 or Pizzeria Simulator, in other words, as most people agree. I think most people agree that Pizzeria Simulator is pretty much like, I feel like I said that weird. Pizzeria Simulator is pretty much where the overarching story of FNAF up till that point was relatively wrapped up in a pretty satisfying way with a bomb-ass monologue by Henry. And some fire, okay? So I feel like Security Breach was supposed to continue like the soft reboot that the FNAF franchise received with the creation of, I want to say, FNAF VR. However, the moment the narrative designers decided to continue the FNAF story by following a bunch of bullshit that Afton somehow started again from beyond the grave, like, just from beyond the grave, I feel like in that moment, that is where the story's cohesiveness started to feel like it couldn't possibly be saved. And that's not to say that the story of FNAF can't be or isn't enjoyable, because, I mean, you know, having a coherent story doesn't always mean that, or rather not having a coherent story doesn't always mean that your story won't be enjoyable. To a degree, I mean, the FNAF story, it still is pretty enjoyable. That's why all of us are still here. It just doesn't make as much sense as it could. Even more so, when Scott admitted to leaning further into his science fiction desires and, you know, he created this concept of Remnant, I just have to say, personally, I hate the concept of Remnant so freaking bad. So bad. So I believe that the concept of Remnant was introduced in the FNAF book series, which is a whole nother can of worms as far as which books canonically happened in the game universe and how much of the story is actually completely separate from the game version of the FNAF timeline. It's just a bunch of spaghetti noodle alternate timeline bullshit. It's a whole nother thing that I am not going to even try to explain to you, because I'm sorry, friend, but I cannot explain it. Okay, but Remnant was introduced in a FNAF book series, and it's basically the culmination of a soul or souls and the strong will and or desire of said soul or souls. Something like that. The idea is that for whatever reason, Afton wants immortality or some childish shit like that, and so he kills a bunch of kids and develop literal killer robots, which would be the entire Funtime band, by the way, to help him in the process of cultivating and studying Remnant. I believe that the Funtime animatronics themselves are supposed to be influenced by or haunted by Remnant too. I think what I hate the most about this idea of Remnant, though, is that it's just so out there, like the time-traveling ball pit from one of those stories. I will never get over that. I would never get over that. I feel like Remnant is used to explain the existence of super sentient machines, whereas personally, I would have been fine with the idea that animatronics produced by Afton Robotics are learning robots, you know, with intelligent AI that just happens to get smarter and I guess therefore more quote-unquote sentient over a long period of time, and over a long period of time of having exposure to human influences. You know, like their murderous creator, William Afton, but I digress. As the game continued to shift from a paranormal horror kind of game to a sci-fi synthwave influenced adventure game with a dash of thriller here and there, inevitably the story began to feel like something else entirely. But you see, personally, I'm not all against change, you know? While I do believe in the whole concept of like, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I do believe that sometimes change can bring out something very interesting in a story. Sometimes what a story needs is a fundamental change. So, you know, I get that. I just feel like that opportunity was missed or just wasn't handled as efficiently as it could have been by the time we get to Security Breach. The original FNAF story, I feel like, should have ended with FNAF 6, as it originally intended to do so. From there, Vanny or Vanessa should have been introduced as the next upcoming villain, as she was, but there was and is absolutely no need to include something so silly like glitch trap. Like, what the fuck is a glitch trap? To me, this is where the sci-fi elements of FNAF began to lean too far into fantasy for me. Okay, the idea that Remnant is a thing that can be transferred into otherwise inhuman objects, such as like not only animatronics, but literal code, is just, it's pretty ridiculous to me, not gonna lie. The fact that one of the biggest threats in FNAF VR was a literal glitch, like Vanellope, like, bro, Vanny/Vanessa is right there, bro. This should have been the moment Afton and the whole Afton family retired as villains completely. Okay, their stories are over with, finished. There's nothing much more to add to them that can't be written out in a newspaper or a magazine, Easter egg somewhere in FNAF, VR, AR, or Security Breach. I think I read about this potential idea for Vanny as a villain in a YouTube comment on another video a long time ago. Nearer to the time when FNAF Security Breach was like still pretty fresh on people's mind and was receiving tons of flack, which, to be fair, I kind of feel like a lot of that flack was deserved. But anyway, that commenter suggested that Vanny could have been an interesting villain and that she could have been like an obsessed fan of William Afton and have an odd intrinsic desire to continue his quote-unquote legacy. It'd be the true crime-obsessed psycho taking up the killing herself, which I do think would have been an interesting plot to watch unfold over the course of a few games, in my opinion. But no, they just had to throw Peepaw Willie in there. That goddamn old man, bro. To continue this, or not continue, but to conclude this video, I suppose, I really just wanted to use this video to state that it's fine for the narrative designers of FNAF to push this franchise into a different direction, because I am not saying that they quote-unquote can't or shouldn't change it. I have no problem with change. But at this point, they should be mindful to move accordingly in lieu of writing villain arcs in sagas. The Afton saga should have been, and as far as I'm concerned, is finished and has been finished ever since Pizzeria Simulator. At this point, Stillwell's focus, I'd like to hope, should be put on developing Vanessa/Vanny as an antagonist or anti-heroine, whatever the fuck she's supposed to be. Explaining those missing kids and what they have to do with the pizzeria, the Glamrock animatronics, and Gregory, and preparing a decisive conclusion to what should now be the Vanessa, Vanny saga of the FNAF franchise. I truly believe that the story of FNAF got this out of hand because it just keeps continuing and building upon itself without much regard to how a single game entry or line of new books can fuck up the entire overarching timeline. I think because of the fact that even till this day, the FNAF franchise makes so much money, the writers, or maybe Scott specifically, I don't know, is he still doing the writing? I don't know. The writers, or Scott, I don't know, just doesn't want to end a franchise that's making his way of living so comfortable. Or maybe it's just one of those things where you've probably been there before. I've definitely been there before. One of those things where it's like you've been writing a particular story for so long that you sort of like don't know how to step away from that project. I mean, you know, it's like, yeah, if you've been writing this particular story for such a long time, then sure, you know, how are you going to move on? Not to mention the reality that there's always a huge chance that your pre-established fans might not fuck with your new work as much as they, fucked with your most popular game or story, which might put a lot of pressure on you to either create something just as good, if not better, or continue writing the story that they already love and support so much until you, retire like Scott did, I guess. That kind of also makes me think of, what the fuck is his name? It was something with an M, Kishimoto, the guy who wrote Naruto. Fucking love Naruto. That whole franchise there. Like, I believe he moved on to writing another story at one point. I'm not sure if he is continuing that new story. I really should check up on him because I'm not even entirely sure if he's still, working on new mangas. I mean, he probably is. I don't know. I should really look into that. But anyway, it makes me think of him because I do recall that by the end of Naruto Shippuden, I think he wanted to step away from Naruto as a whole, even though he ended up inevitably coming back to write a little bit for Boruto. But, he wanted to step away from Naruto, though, and begin working on other projects, I think at least, don't quote me on it. And I just remember that a lot of people were really not fucking with his new stories because, frankly, everyone just wanted to stay in the world of Naruto, in the world of shinobi, in the world of ninjas and things like that. So much so that we ended up with fucking Boruto, and I'm not even finna go back down that rabbit hole. Y'all know how much I fucking hate Boruto on this channel, but I'm not even finna go down that rabbit hole. But it just makes me think of that. I really do think that when so many people gravitate to one particular story of yours, I think it does make it very difficult to step away from that project. Literally because, again, I guess there is the legitimate chance that your fans are probably not going to fuck with your story as much as they fucked with your original story. It just is that it is, I guess. I don't know. Frankly, to get back on track, I still love FNAF, and if nothing else, will continue to stick around just to see how the franchise is looking and, see how well it'll hold up sometime in the future, But as much as I still love so many elements of FNAF, there are just so many things that I dislike or just flat out hate. And the buggy, flat story of Security Breach is one of those things. But let me know what y'all think about it in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. You know how it is. And all of you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful night.